So imagine you wake up on day 31, no alarm panic, you just wake up, clear. You get out of bed, and there's none of that heavy, foggy feeling you've been dragging around for years. Your clothes fit a little differently, your skin looks different, and somewhere around 2 weeks in, you stopped craving the thing you thought you could never give up. That's not a fantasy. That's what actually happens to a lot of people when they cut sugar for 30 days. And I don't mean some extreme elimination diet. I mean making one focused decision, less added sugar, and watching what your body does in response. Now I'll be upfront. The first few days aren't fun. Your body is going to push back, and I'll tell you exactly why that happens. But what comes after is what most people don't see coming. Let's talk about it. Let's start with what sugar is actually doing in your body, because most people only think about it in terms of weight, and weight is part of it. But it's honestly the least interesting part of the story. When you eat added sugar, and I'm talking about the refined stuff, the sugar in your coffee, your granola bar, your pasta sauce, your heart-healthy yogurt, your blood glucose spikes. Your pancreas fires out insulin to deal with it. Glucose gets pushed into your cells for energy. Whatever's left over gets converted to fat and stored. That's the basic loop. Now do that loop 10, 15, 20 times a day, which is pretty normal for most people without them even realizing it, and something starts to break down. Your cells get so repeatedly flooded with insulin that they start to become resistant to it. They stop responding the way they should, so your pancreas has to produce even more insulin to get the same effect. And over time, that system gets exhausted. This is called insulin resistance, and it's one of the most widespread and underdiagnosed conditions in adults over 40. The reason it matters so much is that insulin resistance doesn't just affect blood sugar. It drives chronic inflammation throughout your body. It disrupts your hunger hormones, specifically leptin and ghrelin, which is why you can eat a full meal and still feel like something's missing an hour later. It affects your sleep quality, your mood, your energy, your skin. It's not a side issue, it's a central one. And here's the part that lands differently when you actually see the data. Research published in JAMA Internal Medicine tracked added sugar consumption in adults over a period of years and found that people who got 17 to 21% of their daily calories from added sugar had a significantly higher risk of dying from cardiovascular disease compared to those who kept it under 10%. Not just feeling worse, not just gaining weight, dying earlier from a food ingredient that's been quietly added to nearly everything on supermarket shelves since the low-fat era told us fat was the enemy and sugar stepped in to fill the gap. So when we talk about quitting sugar for 30 days, this is the machinery we're giving a chance to reset, not just the scale, the whole system underneath. So let's walk through what actually happens, day by day, because this is where most people quit, and usually because nobody warned them what was coming. Days 1 through 3 are the hardest, and the reason is straightforward. Sugar, specifically the dopamine hit your brain gets from sugar, is a reward loop. Your brain has been getting that hit multiple times a day, probably for years. When you take it away, your brain notices. You get irritable. Headaches are common. You might feel more tired than usual, not less. Some people describe it as a low-grade flu feeling. That's not weakness. That's your neurochemistry recalibrating. And this is the moment where most people say, okay, this isn't for me. They assume feeling worse means something is wrong. It actually means the process is working. By days 4 and 5, something starts to shift. The headaches usually ease up, the irritability levels out, and this is when the first real change shows up. Your hunger patterns start to stabilize. Because when blood sugar isn't spiking and crashing all day, your hunger hormones stop swinging with it. You start to feel genuinely full after meals, in a way that might actually surprise you. Not stuffed, just satisfied. And that feeling stays. I see this come up constantly. Someone cuts sugar, and after about 5 days they say they don't understand why they're just not as hungry anymore. They're eating less without trying to, without counting anything, without willpower. And the reason is simple. The blood sugar roller coaster that was driving false hunger signals has quieted down. By the end of the first week, something else is happening too. Your liver has started shifting how it processes energy. When sugar intake drops, insulin levels drop with it. And when insulin drops, your body gets a signal it hasn't been getting. a signal that says it's okay to start accessing stored fat for fuel. That transition takes a few days to kick in fully, but by day 7, most people are starting to run on a cleaner, more stable energy source. And you can feel it, not a sudden surge of energy, more like the absence of the 2 p.m. crash, more like getting to 4 o'clock and realizing you haven't thought about food for 2 hours. That's a meaningful shift for most people over 40 who've been riding that blood sugar wave for a long time. Research out of UC San Francisco tracked metabolic changes in children who had high sugar diets and had sugar replaced with other carbohydrates. Same calories, just different source. Within 10 days, liver fat dropped significantly, fasting insulin dropped, and multiple cardiovascular risk markers improved. 10 days, same calories, just different source. The sugar was doing something specific that had nothing to do with the calorie count, so you've made it past the first week, the pushback has settled, and now the changes start compounding in ways most people genuinely don't expect. Week 2 is when the skin stuff starts, and this surprises people more than almost anything else. Sugar triggers a process called glycation, where sugar molecules attach to proteins like collagen and elastin in your skin and essentially degrade them. Less collagen means less elasticity, more fine lines, a duller complexion. When you reduce sugar, that process slows, inflammation drops, and a lot of people around day 10 to 14 start noticing their skin looks clearer. Less puffiness, less redness. If you've been dealing with adult acne or chronic skin irritation, this is often where it starts to visibly improve. Stay with me here, because week 2 also brings something that catches people off guard emotionally. Around day 10 or 11, a lot of people hit a wall that has nothing to do with cravings. It's more like a low mood, a restlessness, almost a boredom. And the reason is interesting. Sugar had been functioning as a quick emotional regulator, a small reward, a way to punctuate the day. When it's gone, the brain is still reaching for that punctuation. That's normal. It passes, but it's worth knowing it's coming so you don't mistake it for a reason to stop. By weeks 3 and 4, the compounding effect really takes hold. Sleep tends to improve, and this is significant because blood sugar instability is one of the most underappreciated disruptors of sleep quality in adults over 40. When glucose is spiking overnight from a late dessert or an evening snack, it can pull you out of deep sleep without you ever knowing why you're waking up at 3 a.m. Stabilize the blood sugar, and a lot of people find they sleep longer and wake up less. Cognitive clarity is another one that shows up in week 3, and this one is hard to quantify but almost universally reported. People describe it as their thinking feeling sharper, less of that afternoon mental fog. Part of it is the stable energy. Your brain runs on glucose and it runs best on steady glucose, not on spikes and crashes. Part of it is the sleep improvement carrying over into daytime function. And part of it is simply inflammation coming down. Chronic neuroinflammation has a real and measurable effect on cognition, and sugar is one of its primary drivers. And this is the part I want you to really sit with, because we talk about sugar as a taste preference, as a comfort food, as something you indulge in occasionally. But what the research shows, and what I see play out again and again, is that for a lot of people over 40, sugar has quietly become the thing standing between them and feeling genuinely well. Not catastrophically unwell, just chronically not quite right. Tired but wired. A little foggy, a little inflamed, a little heavier than they want to be, a little more anxious than makes sense. And they've been living in that zone so long, they've started to think it's just what getting older feels like. It isn't. And 30 days without added sugar has a way of making that very clear. So let's talk about the practical side. Because knowing what happens is one thing, getting through it is another. The first thing to understand is what we're actually cutting. Added sugar, not fruit, not naturally occurring sugars in whole foods. Those come packaged with fiber and water and nutrients that completely change how your body processes them. What we're targeting is the refined stuff. Table sugar, high fructose corn syrup, cane juice, dextrose, maltose, all the names it hides behind on ingredient labels. If you just focus on reading labels and cutting anything with added sugar in the first 5 ingredients, you're most of the way there. The second thing, and this is where people go wrong, don't try to white-knuckle the cravings. Replace, don't just remove. When the sweet craving hits, which it will especially in that first week, have something ready. A handful of berries, a square of dark chocolate, 70% or higher, full-fat Greek yogurt with no added sugar. These aren't cheat items, they're tools. They give your brain enough of a signal to get through the moment without sending blood sugar on a ride. Now, and I want to be careful here because I don't want this to sound simpler than it is, some people have a genuinely difficult time with this. Not because of willpower, because sugar, particularly fructose, activates the same reward pathways in the brain that other compulsive behaviors do. If you find yourself in day 3 unable to think about anything else, unable to sleep, feeling genuinely unwell, that's real. That's biology. Going slower is completely valid. Cutting by half first, then cutting again 2 weeks later, gets you to the same place with less suffering. The goal isn't suffering. The goal is 30 days on the other side of it. A few things that make the first week significantly easier. Protein at every meal. It stabilizes blood sugar and keeps hunger quiet for longer. Not skipping meals, because arriving at a meal ravenous is when willpower goes out the window. And sleep. Protecting your sleep in those first few days matters more than most people think, because sleep deprivation spikes ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, and makes sugar cravings dramatically worse. You're not fighting one battle, you're fighting 2. By day 30, most people report something they didn't quite anticipate. It's not just that they feel better, it's that the craving itself has changed. The thing they thought they couldn't live without, they can take it or leave it. Not because they've developed iron willpower, but because their brain chemistry has genuinely shifted. The reward loop has quieted down. And for a lot of people, that's the most surprising part of the whole thing. So here's where I want to leave you. Pick a start date. Not someday. An actual date. Clear out the obvious stuff. The sodas, the packaged snacks, the sugary drinks. Stock your kitchen with things that keep blood sugar stable. And then give your body 30 days to show you what it can do. You've probably tried a dozen things that promise to change how you feel. This one actually has the biology behind it, and the only way to know what's on the other side is to go through it. Start tomorrow. I'll see you in the next one.